In previous part, we discussed anemophily. In this part, we have to discuss in detail hydrophily. The pollination by water is called hydrophily. As we know, most of the plants use water medium for their gamete transportation. Suppose you take most of the algae, they use water for transportation of what? Gametes. Even in case of bryophytes also, water used for transportation of gametes. At the same time, even pteridophytes also use a water for a gametes transportation. But in case of gymnosperms and angiosperms, generally one specialized structure is developed, that is what we call pollen grain. It contains male gametes. Therefore, generally we may say pollen grain as a first stage of male gametophyte. Then it is transported by different agents. Here the water used as a medium for transportation of pollen grain in case of hydrophily. But it is very rare and special process in case of plant kingdom. Mainly around 50 genera of the plants, they belongs to mainly monocotyledons. These aquatic plants only shows hydrophily. That means all the aquatic angiosperms may not shows pollination by water. Suppose you take the water lily, then Eichhornia, we call it as a water hyacinth, lotus. These are the dicotyledon members. They have flower on surface, and they mainly pollinate by either insects or by wind, where hydrophily is absent. Therefore, only 50 genera of world, they mainly includes monocotyledons, they shows hydrophily. Suppose the most commonly we see in case of Vallisneria, then sea grasses, and in case of the Zoastria marina. In these hydrophytes, generally there is a presence of a special process, hydrophily. If you consider pollination in case of Vallisneria, generally this plant is dioecious. That means male plant bears a male flowers and female plant bears female flowers. That means male and female flowers born on two different plants. If you consider the female plant, that female plant having single female flower with long pedicel, and that pedicel is also flexible with sticky stigma and floating on a surface. Therefore, when you see this diagram, it's a female plant having a long pedicel, and that pedicel is flexible. As a result, according to water level, the female flower always float on the surface of the water. If water level decreases, this pedicel coils and female flower float on surface. It's because the density of female flower and density of water almost all remain same. Hence, always in case of Vallisneria, female flowers float on the surface of water. Then, if you consider the male plant, that male plant bears flowers on spadix inflorescence. Then once they release, the male flower float on surface of the water, and they have specialized petal arrangement, and they form boat-like structure that we call pollen boat. See this diagram. The male plant bears a flowers on spadix inflorescence. After maturity, when male flowers released from the a parental plant, they float on the surface of the water. Accidentally, they reach to the what? Female flower. The male flower, which contain pollen boat, having huge number of pollen grains, and these pollen grains covered by mucilage. As a result, in water, the pollen grains not undergo degradation, they remain live. Accidentally, once the pollen grain intact with a sticky stigma, the pollination is take place. Further, fertilization and embryonic development is take place in case of Vallisneria. Sea grasses and zoostria, these two aquatic plants are submerged. That means they remain inside. As a result, they possess a ribbon-like pollen grains, and these ribbon-like pollen grains once again covered by a mucilage. Then in case of zoostria as well as seagrass also, the stigma is sticky. Once the pollen grains released from the male flower, accidentally they reach the what? Sticky stigma, pollination is take place. Therefore, the all hydrophily showing plants showing some important character here. That is, one is mucilaginous coating in case of pollen grain, one thing. And second one, the generally the sticky stigma is present. And third, here also no attractants at all, because it is water is also non-living agent. Hence, there is no a distinct color in these flowers, no secretion of sweet sugary juice nectar, and also there is no a scent or any fragrance is not emitted by the flower. In this way, the hydrophily takes place in case of some monocotyledon members. If you consider pollination process, majority of plants mainly pollinated by animals that we call the name zoophily. Pollination by animals, popularly we known as the specially zoophily. But most commonest zoophily is that is pollination by insects, mainly that what we call entomophily. If you consider the entomophilous insects, all insect will not carry what? Pollination. In that, most predominant group is honeybees. In the world, they are the most dominant group of the not only insect, animals, they shows maximum pollination. Other than that, butterflies, moths, then beetles. These are the common what insects. At the same time, there are plenty of other insects are there. For example, mosquitoes, house flies, fruit flies. Then other insect, they may not carry out entomophily at all. Then if you consider birds, pollination by birds we call a ornithophily. Here sunbird, then hummingbird are the only two group of birds have capacity to pollinate the a flower. Therefore here the one adaptation we see, these birds are smaller in size. Birds are smaller, but flowers are larger in size. One adaptation. Second one, flower secrete huge quantity of nectar, because here the pollinator is bird which having huge body size, they need more nectar. Then flower is very distinct, because to attract the especially birds. Hence the sunbirds and hummingbirds are the only two special group of birds in the world. They undergo a pollination. They carried out pollination. Then you take lizards, especially garden lizard and a flying lizard. Flying lizard, we also call it as a Chico lizard. These two reptilians carried out pollination. At the same time, if you take primates other than the human beings, the loris, they shows a pollination. Then the another what we say mammals means flying squirrels, then squirrels also carried out pollination. By this what it indicates, majority of animals in the animal kingdom play a very important role in pollination process. In that major group is insects, mainly honeybees. The most important part of pollination is entomophily. It is pollination by insect. The major insect group that involved in pollination is, first one is honeybees, then beetles, butterflies and moths. Therefore, the entomophilous flowers having some important adaptations that we also consider them as a characters we say. First one, to attract insect, they possess a distinct color. The mainly in flower, petals are more distinct part and they are colorful. You see in case of a marigold, rose, jasmine, then in case of hibiscus, the attractive color is there. Then second, the entomophilous flowers responsible for emission of scent. Most of them emit pleasant fragrance to attract what? Insect. There are some beetles are there. These beetles are attracted by unpleasant smell for the pollination purpose. It's a wonders of what? A pollinating insect. At the same time, there is a secretion of sweet sugary juice which is rich in a fructose, that is called nectar. That nectar used by a insect as a food. Therefore, there are certain group of insects are there. They feeds on pollen grain. They are called pollen robbers. Like that, a group of what? Insects. They feeds on nectar. We call a nectar robbers. Insects feeds on pollen grain. We call pollen robbers. Insects feeds on nectar. We call a nectar robbers. Then at the same time, a plant shows a entomophily in that the pollen kit is there. It is a sticky coating of pollen grain, and that is yellow in color, viscous and sticky. And this pollen kit helps to attach insect bristle during pollination. As a result, the pollen grains adhere to the insect body. They transfer to the other or stigma of the flower. Then if you consider the another most important character, many insect having the pollen basket. That pollen basket play a very important role to collect pollen grain from the flower. Then the insect pollination also shows some special adaptation. They lead mutualism mode of life. If you take Amorphophilus plant, it is a tallest flower giving plant. In this locules of a ovary, moths lay egg. Where the specially fertilization is take place and development of what? The specially moth larvae is take place. As a result, Amorphophilus and moth lead here mutualism mode of life. That means moth get shelter for their development, whereas Amorphophilus pollinated by the moth. In such a way, pollination is take place. If you take in case of yucca plant, one insect specificity is there. This yucca plant only pollinated by the one special moth. Its name is Pronuba eucacella. It's a name of the moth, Pronuba eucacella. This is the only moth pollinate the yucca plant. Here also same thing. The moth lays egg into the locules of the ovary. At the same time, it pollinates the plant. Hence, yucca get a benefit of pollination by pollinator, whereas the moth get shelter for their developing young one. In such a way, they lead mutualism mode of life. Even in other insect also, insect shows the specially mutualism mode of life. Pollinating flower, pollinated by insect, there is a benefit for the plants, whereas in rewards to that, the insect may get pollen grain as a food, nectar as a food, or they may get that fragrance, or in other words, pleasant smell. Then in addition to that, one of the recent study shows that the major pollinator was human beings. The pollination by a man, what we call the name Anthropophily. I think presently we have plenty of hybrid plant varieties in the world. They are all developed by artificial pollination by human being itself. Therefore, whatever the natural pollination takes place by different animals as well as abiotic agent like water as well as wind. In contrast with that, if you consider human beings, he was the major pollinator of the world nowadays by artificial method.